Hey guys, just so you know, this is going to be a two-part video. The first part's going to be a review slash insightful story time maybe. The second half is going to be clips of me playing, and most of the cymbals are captioned so you can tell what cymbals I'm playing, but at the end there's going to be a few without. So hope you enjoy. Peace. What is good enough? I've taken up a lot of hobbies throughout my life, and questions like this come up a lot. I've been drumming whenever I can for over a decade, but I've never had a real drum set of my own. Besides an electronic drum kit, I've only gotten a real drum kit about 6 months ago. I understand there are many barriers to entry for having one of these things. It can be very frustrating when people you live with don't want you to have a real drum set. I wanted one, or at least access to one, for a very long time. It's been a Yeah, it has been a joy to be able to drum in peace these past 6 months. Don't let yourself stay in a toxic situation where you can't pursue your interests without being accosted like that forever. Enjoy your life. Anyway, I've always done a ton of research before major purchases. I wanted to buy the best thing I can for the money within my budget. After a lot of painstaking research, I bought a Gretsch Catalina Maple drum set back in September 22 off of Amazon. On top of that, you have to buy stands and cymbals. I knew I didn't want to buy something I would want to replace as I usually do. So I almost always opt for something you might consider mid-range. Cymbals are kind of weird though. There are a ton of considerations that you may only become aware of with experience. The shells I got have been excellent. The stands are great too. They're all heavy duty Gretsch. I definitely lack experience with a variety of gear though, and how they stand up to different applications. I don't really I don't really like spending money. The first set of cymbals I got was the Wuhan Western cymbal set. They were cymbals that sounded the way they should sound, which is great, no complaints. The only real thing I didn't like about them was I would find myself whacking the ride cymbal because I wanted it to be louder, tinier, or something. It's kind of ironic. If you are familiar with Adam Neely, he's an excellent YouTuber and he talks about all things music. He has a band called Sungazer. I've been a huge I've been a huge Tool fan since my first drummer friend Ricky introduced me to their song Schism back in around the 10th grade at a boarding school. Guitar has always been my main instrument. If you want that Tool sound, by the way, I found that the Black Beauty Les Paul. I found it in the Black Beauty Les Paul. I'm very interested in the new variant with Fishman pickups though. I think the secret's in the Les Paul's short scale. Anyway, Tool got me really interested in polyrhythms and odd time signatures. I know this is a meandering way to go about explaining things, but that's just how I roll. Adam Neely's project, Sungazer, I recently really started getting to a few months ago. That's how I started sinking into this rabbit hole of I need new cymbals. I feel some sort of way about this, a bit ashamed and embarrassed. I think I got a bit sucked into the marketing. I also just, spent more money than I should have. Amazon Pay Over Time has made a lot of things more accessible for sure. The problem is that I've been taking advantage of it a little bit too much and am getting close to my financial limit. So I don't feel so great about that. Well, anyway, Songazer's Sean. I'm reading off of a script here, obviously. Songazer's Sean Crowder is an amazing drummer. He does quite a lot of nutty polyrhythms and nested tuplet things, and I can't get enough of it. Polyrhythms are a very refreshing concept to me. I also really enjoy extended chords. These are all concepts that just aren't explored as much. I've been obsessed with music since my teenage years, so it's hard to keep things fresh. So Sean Crowder has some drum sound in his kit that I found very interesting. It turned out to be a trash stack, which is two cymbals with holes that make them sound quote unquote trashy. The trashiness, I do think, does make them sound quite unique, but it's basically just an extra hi-hat without the pedal to control it. You can adjust the sustain by how tight you set them up. If you hit it relatively light and in the correct place, it sounds like a closed hi-hat. If you give it a good smack, it sounds like you have a hi-hat opening closed quite quickly. This is a bit of a foreign concept for me before I was able to get acquainted with the cymbal in person. It actually arrived, one of the bottom cymbal was reversed. It was like flopped. I couldn't figure it out how to set it up until like, yeah, that thing's inside out. So I had to... Anyway, this rabbit hole goes really deep. You can watch 2 different videos of the same cymbal and it sound completely different depending on the mic and placement. 2 cymbals are the same. 2 cymbals that are of the same model are going to sound different too. You also have to consider that cymbals do in fact start to sound different over time through use and oxidation and whatever other environmental factors affect them. How can you possibly make sense of all this or form an opinion with any degree of certainty? What makes one cymbal better than another? Everyone seems to say, go test the cymbal in person with the sticks that you're going to play them with. Play as many cymbals as you can. I don't particularly want to go to a store and be obnoxious and get kicked out, though, for smacking on every cymbal that I can find. But I did go to my local guitar center and played around a little bit after the fact. Couldn't be smacking on these things nearly as much or as loud as I would like to anyway. Maybe that's just a personal problem. Feeling a bit embarrassed about those things. It really comes down to personal preference and application, what cymbals you want. The only thing I could decide on was I couldn't decide on anything. Was started with I want a trash stack, turned into me deciding I'm replacing my entire set with Sean Crowder selections. He's indeed sponsored and partnered by Meinl, and in some sort of way, but he was using Meinl cymbals before he had that relationship with them. Again, and I still feel like I got swept up in the marketing at least a little bit, but still, I have grown to respect the man and really enjoy his drumming and his sound and the sound that I have had, and his sound is the sound that I've had in mind at the time. Got the Meinl cymbals, and I've been playing them for a few weeks now. The only cymbals I've developed any specific preference for over time was the ride cymbal. The only quality I really cared about was I wanted every strike to be heard no matter how hard I hit the cymbal. I don't really have a specific style, but that seemed to be what jazz drummers like. I settled on a Byzance 22-inch extra dry thin ride. I didn't get the feeling the cymbal brought the value of $600, especially at first. But different cymbals are good at different things, I guess. I mean, the cymbals look interesting. It has a wash sort of sound, like a waterfall maybe, because it's hammered. Maybe maybe a little tinny or springy sound to it as well. But also a generally lower frequency than I'm used to. I think I like it. I still find my used Sabian ride to be useful though too, and I paid $40 for it, and I keep it on my kit. I've been keeping it on my kit alongside the Meinl ride because I like them both and they produce different sounds. At this point, I was also questioning if I really understood the use of a ride cymbal. Also like the trash stack I bought, though I could easily get a similar sound with my old Wuhan hats on a normal stand. The trash cymbals are quite unique though, I'm very partial to them. The Meinl hi-hats are darker and are washy as they are hammered as well, but the Wuhan hi-hats were just fine. As I wrote this, it almost makes me sad because logically, in my financial situation, I should send back the expensive cymbals, at least for now. The cheap cymbals are just fine. The Byzance crash is excellent too, but again, the Wuhans are just fine. The significance and difference is largely lost on me. It's clear that there are diminishing returns and tons of factors to consider that have nothing to do with the price tag for cymbals. Even after I bought the Meinl cymbals, and all of them became primary pieces of my drum set, I was still looking around for other offerings, cymbals that are hammered to have a similar extent, or cymbals that are hammered to a similar extent as my new Meinl cymbals don't really seem to be offered by many brands. The final piece of kit I wanted to discuss are the Weiss cymbals that seem to have just been released recently. I haven't found a single review on them. There is very little information on them. I have all this camera equipment though, and I've been wanting to do videos again for a long time. So this is what inspired me to do this video. What an opportunity to be among one of the first what an opportunity to be among the first to review these cymbals. It seems like they had an okay return policy. They didn't respond to my email requesting a set for review though. I'm nobody though, so who cares? The ride cymbal and the hi-hats were a little over a third of the price of the Meinl cymbals I bought, making them a very tempting offer. I just didn't have any way to compare them except getting them here in person. These cymbals haven't been marketed a whole lot. I would not have found them unless I was specifically looking for them. There's 2 very short videos of them on the Weiss YouTube channel, and that's all I've been able to find. Their main selling points are that they are dry cymbals with high articulation. They're also hammered, and they also are made of bronze. I got a 21-inch ride and a 15-inch hi-hat, which are currently the only offerings in each category on the Steve Weiss website, unless you want the unhammered ones. They arrived neatly packaged in just 2 days. Shipping was $8 to Illinois. I wanted to love these cymbals, and they may be growing on me a little bit. I've used them on and off for several sessions so far, mainly comparing them to my existing Meinl cymbals. They sound very similar. They share quite a few qualities, but I do in fact still prefer the Meinls. I think this comes down mostly to personal preference, but the Weiss cymbals are louder and higher and tinnier sounding. I also think that the Weiss ride has a lot to offer in dynamic range if you play with a softer hand. At the same time, the Weiss ride has a massive crash. I cannot handle this cymbal without hearing protection. Your sticks will indeed start getting drowned out when it gets loud. Both rides also seem to have a dead sounding bell, but it isn't non-existent. I don't have much to say about the Weiss hi-hat other than, again, it's louder, higher, and tinnier. I think that any decent quality hi-hat you use is going to be fine. If you like the lower price or you want a much louder cymbal, the Weiss cymbals are a good option. Objectively, I think all the cymbals I've talked about are fine. The Meinl cymbals are quite similar to the Weiss cymbals, but for my purposes, I don't think the Weiss cymbals are going to be replacing my Meinl cymbals, which are the current mainstay of my kit. I prefer the lower tone of the Meinl cymbals I have, but I hardly know the difference. I think Weiss cymbals definitely have a particular application, but their higher frequency washiness is not something I'm comfortable with. They're also much louder with less force. I think I would have loved these cymbals if I didn't already get used to the ones that I have now. You smack them once hard enough, you're immediately going to be putting on hearing protection. It's still a good ride for playing softer, more dynamic styles if you're willing to play lighter on it and take full advantage of its dynamic range. Want to add that the Meinl ride, they just kind of seem a little bit compressed when you hit them. I don't necessarily. I mean, I've grown used to it. I don't really feel comfortable recommending one cymbal or another. I prefer the Meinl cymbals as they have a darker wash sound that I've grown to enjoy as I've played them over the last few weeks. The loudness and brightness of the Weiss cymbals is just a jarring change for me. Do you want darker? Do you want brighter? What can you afford? If you care about my opinion, I think all things are generally the same besides how you'd like your cymbals to behave. there are also considerations for recording that I'm not familiar with. A drier, darker, more controlled sound I think is probably better for recording, but I have no idea. the difference the differences in sound can't really be directly translated in the price. I can tell you that for sure there are diminishing returns. Cymbals generally sound like cymbals, you know. You can definitely tell the difference between a poorly made cymbal and a good one, but at a certain point everything comes down to application and preference. I think the Weiss cymbals could be good for certain people for certain uses, but they aren't for me. In this time it's quite possible that I become a Meinl fanboy. Keep in mind that I really don't have a ton of experience in all this. There's some other sets that I do want to look at if you're interested. I think the Meinl HCS series would be worth trying out, as well as the Dark series. I actually want to try both these sets in a comfortable setting, but right now that doesn't really seem like it's in the cards for me. I keep in mind what you want out of your equipment. Try not to get so caught up in that it prevents you from playing in the first place. The finer details of equipment are generally going to be completely lost on the audience, but that isn't a license to make it. That isn't a license not to make sure it isn't kept that way. Don't be playing straight junk. Okay, after this I'm gonna have some footage of these different cymbals. Peace.